Thanks for joining us for the Fight for Your Marriage podcast with Charlene and Lori. This is a place where you can find hope for your marriage through Jesus Christ. Hey, we're so glad that you're with us today for this episode.
Thank you for joining us.
We have a great episode for you today. I know every time I say that, but literally, I think we're really producing some great episodes lately.
You do say that, but we love what we're getting from people sharing their testimonies, which is so fantastic for you to hear.
Right. And today you're going to hear the testimony of Victor and Heidi. And this is really going to be an episode that's going to resonate with the men because Victor was the one who was praying and standing for their marriage restoration. And it's also going to resonate with the women because Heidi has gone through some recovery issues in her life. She's walked alongside her husband as he went through recovery issues. And I really think that both men and women are going to get a lot out of this episode today.
And to see the power of God regardless of the circumstances. If you mention the circumstances, people are going to say, oh, that's impossible. But with God, nothing's impossible.
Right. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Let us know. We want to hear your comments on it. So comment on the platform you listen on, or you can go to our website at rejoiceministries.org. And we would love to hear your feedback on this episode and any episode for that matter. But ask God, before you start listening to this, to really just soften your heart and to use the story and the testimony that Heidi and Victor have to show you how he can do the impossible in your situation because he's done it in their situation and he is able to do it for you as well. So I hope you enjoy this testimony. Well, Victor and Heidi, thank you for joining us today. We're so excited to have you on the podcast and excited that you have a restored marriage, but also, Victor, you were the one who stood for your marriage to be restored. And so that is something we have very few testimonies on the podcast of men who stood for their marriage. And so I know this episode is going to be a blessing to many, many people. So thank you for being with us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited about this opportunity and being able to stand and see the result of standing by being reconnected with my wife.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, let me ask a question, and whoever wants to start can start. But tell us a little bit about how you guys how you met, how you were in the beginning stages of your marriage and what that's all about.
Yeah, well, we were introduced at a Bible study, actually. We were on a Wednesday night Bible study, and I had been going on a regular basis. It was in a home group, and pretty small that I knew everyone there. So if you saw a new face, you were like, okay, who's this? And that's what happened.
Yep.
Victor was there and had a ball cap on, and we were praying. Now, who is this?
I was a little younger back then.
And so you guys dated, got married, did you have issues? Did you have one of those dating relationships that was full of drama, or did everything seem pretty seamless as you were dating?
No, we just fell right into we did a great relationship. We met, and Heidi was a little bit timid at first. I was nervous just to talk to her, but she was a little timid at first, and I was persistent, and we just kind of hit it off really well, and we had a lot of similar interests, and a lot of our growing up was very similar. We had a lot in common, and as we got to know each other, we realized that we just worked really well together.
Yeah.
And we dated for 2 years before we ended up getting married.
Yeah. There wasn't a lot.
No,
we really just got along really well, had fun together. We talked about a lot of things. We talked deeply enough, I feel like going in, we knew of some issues that were going to be there for sure.
Mm-hmm. So you both were believers when you got married. Then you both are following and walking with the Lord.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I grew up in the church, but I had fallen away, and I was a newer believer when we met. I had recommitted my life to Christ, and I was still kind of a baby Christian again. And but Heidi, she seems to have a lot more faith than I do at times, and she's very very spirit led, and she was a lot more developed in her walk with the Lord when we met.
So you're dating, you're both growing in the Lord, you get married, and how does the first year or so of marriage go?
Oh, the first year of marriage was so hard. I mean, yeah, because we were around 30 years old when we got married, a little bit older, I would say.
Yeah.
So we'd done a lot of life like separate, independent people. I feel like the first year was really hard for us. Just a lot of like selfishness that was there on both sides, a lot of wanting to do things a certain way and expectations about certain things that didn't really match. And so it was a hard year.
There were some growing pains definitely in the beginning, but we tended to work those things out. We communicated decently, not really well, but we communicated enough to be able to get past some of the little issues that we were having. And we both realized, because we were older, so we both realized that this was probably just part of two selfish people coming together and trying to figure out how to live life together. And we struggled a little bit that first year.
And then did things start improving, or did they continue to go the other direction?
No, I would say that things got pretty rough because he was walking in with, some secrets that were kind of under the surface there that were growing. And I feel like, I'll let him speak on this, but he thought they would get better, but they were actually getting worse. And so there was a secret. And then he also lost his job. So there was a lot of pressure on us pretty early into the marriage.
Yeah, I had a lot of baggage that I brought into the marriage, that secrets that I didn't really want to tell her about, because she probably wouldn't have married me if had I divulged everything. And I figured, I'm a guy, I can handle it. I can just, when we get married, some of this stuff will go away. I got involved with pornography when I was at a young age, and it just kind of carried and progressed. And as we all know, the accessibility to pornography out there is just crazy right now. So as it became easier to see this kind of bad material, I kind of would, if there was a struggle in the marriage, if there was a struggle at work, I would secretly dive into pornography, and just to escape some of that stress that was going on. And that made a toll. It took a toll on our communication. I would isolate myself.
Our intimacy, of course.
Intimacy would start to decline.
Not just sexual intimacy too. I would say emotional intimacy was missing, and I kind of felt like, okay, something's off. I don't know what it is per se. I crave it, and I want it. And I remember praying at a retreat for more intimacy in the marriage. And, when you pray, expect things to happen, because things got really kind of rocky.
Yeah.
At first, I feel like God was trying to bring it out to the forefront, bring it into the light, what was going on. But Victor was just too afraid to come forward and divulge the information.
Did you know, Heidi, before the marriage at all, that Victor had a past struggle with pornography, or was this a new revelation to you?
Yes, I did know. He did mention it, that, in his early walk with the Lord, he was like, I'm struggling to he just gave me enough to know that it was something that he may struggle with. but that he was trying to turn away from it. So I didn't really dive deep into what does that look like? What do you mean? So I knew somewhat of it.
And Victor, what you said is so common that we hear from people, that they get married thinking, well, that's going to solve my problem. I'm going to have a wife that I'm with. I'm going to be able to be sexually intimate with a person. That'll solve the pornography problem. And so many experts say it's not about a sexual issue. It's not about a sexual desire. It's about it's a sinful desire, you know what I mean? But it's craving that escape from reality, and it's craving that just I can check out and look at this 2D image and that can be enough, to just make me forget about work or whatever other issues. So It's very common to hear people say that. How did you realize that when you guys were married now a couple of years that it was an issue? Did Victor just come to you and say, I'm struggling with this? Or how did you start to understand what he was struggling with?
No, it was unfortunately a find on his phone, and it was pretty disturbing and emotionally, upsetting to me, because I thought, well, I'd ask him from time to time, "Are you struggling with that? Like, how's that going?" And it was always just like, "Oh no!" And so to see something was really like a jolt, and it really rocked things. And he tried to, I think, fix it like on the surface, but that's how it came out, was kind of a big.
Yeah. And I tried to minimize it. I tried to say, well, it's not as big a deal as you think it is, and I was backpedaling, trying to figure out, how am I going to save this? How am I going to keep myself from losing my marriage, or her finding out the real depth of what's going on? And and she was praying for it to be revealed. And so that my attempts to hide it didn't work at all. And so she eventually found out.
That is one of the things that we dealt with earlier in our marriage with Bob, because he had been away to college, becoming a funeral director, and he had seen his grandfather with magazines years before, and been seen him by, not that he should have seen him, but he found them, and they were hidden, and he found where they were behind a barn. He did not tell anybody, but it started a desire in him that would not have normally started such an early age.
Yeah.
And he came into the marriage with me not realizing any of that. But then we talked about it after his marriage, because he said the same thing. He thought that spirit of lust would be taken care of by our marriage. Instead, it was not. And so he was battling in the mind, and what to do and what not to do.
So what you have walked through is common, unfortunately, and very sadly, and more common, I would guess. I don't have a statistic in front of me, because we're carrying, in our pockets, access to it. I think it's easier for people to get hold of. So what was your response, Heidi, when you realized this and Victor's trying to minimize it? Were you coming alongside him thinking, we're going to get through this, or were you just too devastated, or how did you feel at that time?
There was basically two big events that happened. The first event, finding out, and I stayed alongside him. I was like, okay, because I actually am in recovery as well, from alcoholism, and had been doing a recovery program pretty early into the marriage. And so I was familiar with recovery, and I knew, okay, he alluded that it was kind of an addiction. So I'm like, okay, you need to get, I was trying to manage it and control what he was doing. Okay, get to Celebrate Recovery. Let's get accountability on your phone. I'm the accountability person. Like, I was trying to manage his addiction. And so I fell into codependency with Victor, which is also detrimental. So I wasn't trusting that God could do it, that God would be the one to fix him. I mean, I did, but I was still like, okay, go to church. Okay, go to recovery, instead of praying that God would do it and surrendering my husband at the feet of the cross. I did not do that.
What was going through your mind at this time, Victor? Were you wanting to be managed, or were you like, let me just have my sin and you're making a big deal about this? Or how did you feel?
No, I knew that I needed to do something. I just didn't know where to start. And it had gone so deep that I didn't know how to break free of it. And so I think it had more control over me than I wanted to believe it did. And so even when I was trying to not do it, I ended up just doing it anyway. And that desire of not wanting to do it would send me into a shame cycle, and I would then dive deeper into it again. And it wasn't until I actually got help that I was able to see some of that stuff and get the support that I needed.
So where along the way did you guys separate?
We had been married 5 years, and we separated, or just under about 4.5 years, I guess, when we separated. And I went and lived with my family members, and Heidi stayed in the house. And we tried to do some marriage counseling, and I decided at that point to dive into Celebrate Recovery and some other things that to try to help break this stronghold that I had. And but I just kept slipping back. I would take 5 steps forward, and then 3 steps back, and then 5 steps forward, and then 3 steps back, and that seemed like the cycle. And Heidi was left in the wake of that throughout that whole process. In the series, it had to be pulled out of me. I didn't just freely give it to Heidi, and I think that was what was really detrimental to Heidi, was the fact that it had to be pulled out of me. It wasn't just I didn't freely give it up, and the pornography led to me having an affair, and then she found out about that, and that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. And then she realized that there was how deep my pornography addiction had reached, and that's when we separated and started to have started some premarital or some marital marriage counseling through one of the local churches here in the area. We did that for about 4 months or so. About 4 months of marriage counseling.
At that time, did you feel like the Lord was helping you with that additional counseling? Did you feel, Victor, that was giving you a source of strength?
It was. It did. It helped me to get perspective on what I was putting Heidi through, and it helped me it bolstered the thought of me wanting to break free of this addiction that I had. And so that's really what the counseling helped me to do.
Where were you at with this, Heidi, at this point? Were you in counseling just to check it off the list and say, like, you've done this and this, and we've done counseling and I can move on? Did you want to go through counseling to try to really work on the marriage, or where were you at this point?
Yes, no, I still wanted to, because I was actually pregnant with my son. I had just found out that I was pregnant with our son Mark when I, about 3 weeks of knowing that, and then like all this revelation of what was really going on came out, and I did not want to end the marriage. I was just like, why is this happening, Lord? Like, how could this be? And so I was hoping that we could make it work with the counseling. And I was coming alongside him, but I was so hurt and deeply wounded by the betrayal that I was like, I can't go through this one more time. Like, God, I will break. If this happens one more time, I emotionally cannot handle it. And so I'm approaching this trepidately. Like I'm nervous to do this, but I will explore it. And should anything else happen, like I'm out. That's just what my mind said. If anything else happens, I can't do it and I'm out. I'm not going to put myself through this anymore.
Yeah.
Had you gone personally to Christian counseling for yourself to work through this with the shock of what happened?
No, I didn't do, individual therapy. That probably would have been, I had done a lot of individual therapy prior to all this, just working on, I'd lost my mom and brother in a car accident, which I feel is a really important piece of my makeup and how I process things. I lost my dad at 12 years old. So trauma and losing people like really impact me. And so I done a lot of work around that, but the betrayal, no, not until after we divorced. That's when I really did some deep therapy with it.
So what led up to the divorce? You're going through counseling and we're working through things, and was it not successful? It just kept going, getting worse in the marriage?
No, things were looking like reconciliation, actually. And then, our therapist was like, absolute honesty. Like, you need to be above reproach, Victor, with everything. And I felt like something was off. Like, our communication had been getting better. We were talking deeper. And then I felt like he was hiding something. And I asked him about it, and he said no. And to his, now knowing now, his sponsor had told him, like, it was not deep enough to really tell me. It was just like looking at, like, wasn't like the worst case scenario. It was more like YouTube videos, and he's like, just leave it. But for me and what our therapist had said, he needed to tell me. So when that came out into the therapy session, I was just like, wow. And I had been praying, and I just felt like I'm done. The lies are just too much for me. If you can't tell the truth about a small thing, you won't tell truth about a big thing. And so I'm done. That's
And so you headed to divorce.
Yes.
We headed to divorce. That was in 2013.
And how did you feel, Victor? Did you understand her feelings and wanting to end things?
I understood, but I didn't want it. I wanted to keep working on it, and to keep because I over that 4 months I was going to my own personal counseling, and then doing the marriage counseling with Heidi. So I had made some big strides, and but I understood where Heidi was, and I didn't like it. It was devastating to me. It felt like my world was just kind of coming to an end, and what I dreamt of, having a family with kids and a home and all this, was just out of reach now.
And Heidi, this is when you were pregnant, right?
Yes, I was pregnant with Mark.
And that's emotional and hard anyway when you're pregnant. I mean, there's a lot of feelings that you're going through with the changing of your body and responsibility. So when it should be the most happiest time, you've got a crisis that you're facing, and that you both are facing, because this is a new baby that's coming into the world, and you want it to be a blessed supernatural experience for a birth and all.
So what happened next then, when you divorce? And Victor, when did you start fighting for your marriage?
Well, when Heidi told me that she wanted a divorce, obviously it was devastating. I was hoping that it would just kind of go away, and that she would change her mind, and I went and lived with family members, like I had said, and at that point, when she wanted a divorce, I guess it was time for me to go find an apartment. So I had to go find an apartment, and that was a hard thing for me, because it seemed more final. And and I just at that point I made a choice that I wanted to pursue reconciliation at whatever cost it was. And I started searching around at churches, got online to try to figure out what was out there for support for
Right.
or reconciliation of your marriage, and there wasn't a lot. And even through the local churches, everywhere you look, there's a divorce attorney, and there's all these other resources, but there wasn't a lot of
Divorce recovery. Did you find that one?
And that's what I did. I went to divorce care, and he's like standing for marriage, and I'm just like, I'm moving on. I mean, I was so moved on that, I started dating. I was trying to replace Victor with a new husband. I did not, although I was still, of course, praying, like going to church, doing those things. I feel that I put finding another spouse as like the Lord in this situation, that I did not make God my husband. I did not like go into healing right away with that. I felt like I forgave Victor. I'm like, I forgive you. I need my boundary. And so I was trying to find another husband. And I was even engaged to be married
Wow.
at one point. And literally 3 weeks before the marriage, God very much revealed that this is not the right thing to do. And so and from that point, that's when I decided, you know what? No more dating. I'm just going to focus on the Lord and my relationship with God. And I felt like it was a restart for me with God.
That's a big event in your life and personally, because you both have to make a huge personal commitment to the Lord personally before you can do it together. You need both.
Did you know that Victor was standing for your marriage and fighting for your marriage and had a desire to reconcile at that time?
I did. He was telling me all the things he was doing. I'm going to celebrate recovery. I'm doing the therapy. I'm always going to be married to you. I'm standing for our marriage. He wears his wedding ring. I'm like, oh my gosh, stop. No, I'm not. I'm not going to remarry you. That ship has sailed. Like, it's over. It's done. It'll never happen.
The same words that everybody seems to hear, like, you're not coping. You need to move on.
He had family members telling him that.
I don't think there was anybody in my immediate family that would encourage me. Even my mom, she would have moments of encouragement and saying, "Well, okay, I see what you're trying to do, but you really should move on. Look at Heidi. She's dating and this and that, and it was in the evenings and in the times I was by myself that were the hardest times, and that's when I got encouragement from you guys. Was I'd listen to a podcast, I'd read a testimonial, I'd read something, and it would help me, encourage me to keep going and to
got you focused.
It got me focused.
It got you focused.
It did. And you got the Rejoice Marriage Ministries was a godsend for me, because there was nothing else out there that would support this kind of thing. The standing for a marriage that was dead, and it looked like there was no hope of recovery or reconciliation coming from anywhere, even my own family. So
that's probably one of the saddest things to us, that when a marriage falls apart, that people in the church, outside of the church, family members, loved ones, are so willing to just say, okay, it fell apart, now move on, instead of coming alongside a person and helping them fight for their marriage. It's just so backwards in our minds that I have a hard time, because the example I always give is if Heidi, if Victor was diagnosed with cancer and you wanted to help him find the best treatment center, the best facility, he's got this problem and we need to get it fixed. And how can we do it? I'm sure you would probably have droves of people coming to help you. But with sin, it's like the enemy has such a twist on people's minds that it's like, well, he sinned, he had an affair, you have a right to divorce him. All the things that people say, and they won't help you fight for a marriage, and it's backwards. And that's why what you're doing, I thank you again for being here today and being so transparent, because it is so needed, for people to see that there is hope. Both of you have gone through addictions of different kinds, and have gone through the steps to recovery. And the enemy wants us to keep that silent and be shamed by our past sins. And instead, when we bring that to light, that's when other people can see, oh, they walked through it and they had victory, and I can get victory. And so that's our hope always with everything we do, is we want people to see that there is hope for their marriage, and then to be those bold people, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. I want to ask you guys about that, but to really come alongside our friends and our family and our loved ones, and get involved in helping them. So I applaud you for sharing today, and thank you for being so transparent.
Yes, it's huge, because many people think their problems are so big, so impossible. Their families are negative about anything, and they don't believe the power of God, of what he can do in healing and resurrecting marriages, in spite of all the different circumstances that you have had to face or other people have had to face. And we need to put God, that nothing is impossible with God. There's scriptures that says that, but we have to believe it and hold on to those scriptures, that regardless of the circumstances today, nothing is too hard for God to do.
Well, circumstances is a perfect segue, because Victor, you see Heidi moving on, engaged. When was your child born in the middle of this? When was your son born? Before your engagement and all of that, or he was older?
Yeah, it happened before he was. The engagement was after Mark was born.
Yeah.
Many years.
Okay.
Yeah.
We also have a daughter that's a little older. So.
Okay.
She was around 2 when we separated, and he was still brand new. He was born in 2000. Mark was born in 2014 in March.
Okay.
14.
So when you were going through this and seeing Heidi moving on, and you're thinking, no, I'm going to pray and fight for this marriage, and you're getting discouragement from people around you, did you ever waver in that desire to have your marriage restored? Did you ever think there's no hope, or did you stay steadfast in that pursuit?
Well, honestly, I had moments of weakness, moments of seeing Heidi going out on dates, doing life without me, and I thought in my mind, well, if she's doing it, I'm just gonna go do it. Forget it. I'm done standing for my marriage. I think I stopped standing for our marriage about 30 times.
30 times a month, or 30 times total?
Our standards can relate.
Yes.
And I immediately knew, as soon as I made that decision to go on a date with somebody, to entertain something. And I think I went on 3 dates with somebody in those 7 years that we were to apart. I immediately knew. I got home and I was like, Lord, I'm sorry. I know this is not what you're supposed to do. It was just this heavy conviction. And I knew that at that moment that my purpose was to stand for my marriage no matter what. And
Amen.
And that happened. Me quitting happened a lot, but me being tempted and going on a date happened about 3 or 4 times.
What was happening in the middle of your stand with your recovery? Were you still pursuing recovery? Were you having success in that area? Were you still struggling with that?
Yeah, that was the key for me, for everything. I knew that something in my life drove me to do what I did. I had an amazing wife, the potential for an amazing family, and I still messed it up. And I knew that if I didn't get to the root of what was going on, in me that I would drag that into the relationship when it was restored, or just or down further down my life. So I continued going through recovery, counseling, and really getting down to the root of what was going on, childhood stuff that I didn't even realize happened, and that only came out through counseling and digging deep into the word, and digging deep into my life and trying to figure out what was going on. And that was the key for me to have healing from pornography. And
Amen.
and it's the time that I spent in the wilderness was when I did the most work on myself. And that was the key to, I think, the key to us coming back together.
Yeah. Heidi, did you notice him changing at this time? Did you have a little front row seat to see some of this, or were you still skeptical?
I just had a very strong boundary of like, I don't like, good for you, but I really don't care as far as it's related to me. He invited me even to his graduation for Celebrate Christ. I knew he was sponsoring men. I was proud of him and happy for him, but for a while, very skeptical for me. Like, I just didn't want it to affect me, you know? So
Yeah.
I would say during COVID, 2020 is where 2019, even 2018, I went on a mission trip to India, and I felt like something happened there, with like just, he was taking care of the kids, and I just had a lot of time to reflect and think, and I had noticed a change in him. And I remember just starting to think about all the times he'd been there for me. He's like such a good friend, like such a wonderful person. If anything happened to me or him, I would be devastated. Like, I just started thinking these things. And then I thought, wow, could there be a reconciliation? Because two of the pastors I was with said, you guys seem like you have a really great relationship. Like, could? And I'm like, nah. And so entertaining the idea of reconciliation just a little bit in 2017, around this mission trip, and then got home and kind of went back into life. And I think it was during COVID when I had like the front row seat, because we were, sharing kids and more around each other more. And I was seeing like, wow, his responses to things are different. He seems very secure in who he is. He seems settled. His responses to things really were different. And I noticed then, like, okay, something's different about Victor.
I think the difference came for me when I finally released them to the Lord. I was going through all this recovery, all this counseling. I was spending time in the Word. I was trying to tell Heidi about all that stuff. I'm like, here's what I've been doing, giving her my platter of good deeds. And
here's my resume.
and can't you see all the good things I'm doing? You should have me back in your life again. And it wasn't until, and that just kept pushing her further and further away. It wasn't until I said, Lord, this is my family, or this is your family, actually. This is your family. These are your kids. You do what you're going to do with this marriage, whether I end up being single the rest of my life, or you reconcile this marriage. I'm giving it to you. You control this. This is yours. I'm taking my hands off the wheel, and I'm gonna give it all to you. And I think that was the point where the heaviness that she was feeling before just kind of went away.
Yeah.
Letting go and letting God just come in and do his touch on both of you separately and individually. That is so key to a marriage restoration. It can't be just one person.
And it can't be us, because that's what you were dealing with in our power. We're like, well, Lord, I release them to you, but just in case you can't handle it, I'll be over here helping you, maneuvering things.
Right.
And we both were doing that. I'd like to bring that, like, or the partner that is in an addiction relationship, like it's very common for you to try to like manage it and do it yourself and control it. So we were flip-flopping between trying to help God and like that just does not work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So when she broke off her engagement, what were you thinking, Victor? Were you thinking like, this is it, it's coming, or what was happening then?
Well, that thought went through my mind for a split second, and then I realized, I remembered that I had given them to the Lord, so I couldn't react on it.
I said, what did you think when I told you I wasn't getting married? He said, I wanted to like, he's like, oh, in his mind, like, oh my goodness, God answered these prayers. I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah.
But he, like I said, he tried to, was very kind and respectful, like, are you okay? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, So
Yeah. But
always be low key.
underneath, I was jumping for joy.
I was just going to say that. But behind the scenes, you go home and you're shouting hallelujah. God is moving.
yeah.
Did you have more people at any point in this journey, Victor, that were supporting you in your desire for restoration? Did you ever have people that came alongside you and said, I'm going to help you pray for this?
I had a few. My mom was very good about praying for us, and there was a few people, mainly in my support groups, that would celebrate recovery. Some of the relationships that I built through that process, that were praying and knew that I was standing, even though they thought it was crazy. They still would pray for reconciliation, because they knew. I mean, after 7 years of 6.5 years at this point of waiting, nobody thought it was going to be. So everybody thought I was just wasting my time.
Yeah. Well, what happened? What changed that things started coming back together?
I think the final thing for me was doing a regeneration program, working on my codependency. And that's where I really, really saw that it wasn't just Victor that had, been a contributing factor to our marriage, like being unhealthy. And I thought, like, okay, I have a lot of control and codependency things that are making this an unhealthy structure. And I'm not trusting God. I'm not believing that God can take the pain that I've experienced from my childhood and from this betrayal. And really, like what he did on the cross pays for everything. And once I realized, that was a very epiphany moment where I'm like, true forgiveness for everything and letting go of all of that pain, and then making restitution towards Victor, where I really thought, wow, yeah, maybe we could reconcile. And then I thought, let's try to, I did, a step with him where I asked for forgiveness and tell him where I was wrong. And I said, and furthermore, I'd like to, on another note, go out on a date and see about that. And he was like,
Victor, what was Victor's response?
Victor has that written down somewhere. He'll never forget.
I didn't know how to respond to it. I thought I was being punked or something, but but it was. I honestly, I was just kind of dumbfounded, and I was like, it just hit me. I thought I would just be blown away, but it was like this relief, like just this relief came over me, and this peace and this joy, and we still didn't know if it was going to work.
Right.
That was just her saying she wanted to be interested. She was interested in trying.
That's right.
We talk about that. We actually have a podcast episode where we talked about that like sometimes people think that restoration is a switch, it's going to happen. For you, it happens suddenly, but for so many other people, it's a journey to restoration, because you're rebuilding a friendship, you're rebuilding a relationship, you're rebuilding a marriage. And it's such a slow process for so many people. And, people can get upset and frustrated on the timing with God saying, my husband came over for dinner last night, or my wife wanted to have a date night and then they went quiet again. And that's so common to just see that rebuilding just taking a while, but it's all part of the process. It doesn't always happen suddenly for people. And that's just something to continue to not get frustrated with God, but to continue to wait on him and his timing. What was your timeline like after that initial, let's start talking about things again? When did you guys start to realize, like, I think we're really heading towards restoration?
Pretty soon.
Pretty soon, yeah. We went on a couple dates, and we thought, well, we're getting along better than we thought we would, so this is great. And we said, well, let's not tell the kids. We'll keep it from the kids, and we'll just, that way we're not dragging them through something, just in case it doesn't work out. In case we realize it doesn't work out, they're not going to be affected by it. And it was very quickly. It was within a month of us dating again that we sat the kids down and said that we were dating and we were together again, and that we were going to be getting remarried.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
December to December, we were engaged in December and then remarried in March. So
that's wonderful. So you've been remarried now for 2 years?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Heidi, I like what you said. I want to go back a little bit. You said that you had to apologize to Victor for your role in some of the problems. And I think that's huge, because on the surface, when there's something like an infidelity or there's sin or an addiction that's exposed, we can think it's that partner's problem. They were the one that caused this problem, when in actuality, regardless of what causes a marriage to fall apart, there is always two people that have to take ownership of their part of it. And I think that's such a important thing that you said. We might have to own 1% of it, but we have to own our actions. I know you had that same situation and yours, that even though, your husband was doing, it was, verbally abusive and unfaithful, you said, you know what, I wasn't being the wife I should have been.
And even the Lord revealed it to me.
Right.
He did not just blindly let Bob be the one to take all the blame, but he revealed to me at a church service.
And a marriage doesn't fall apart overnight. It didn't fall apart with one thing. It's a slow fade of two people just slowly unraveling. And that's so important to come back to that healing, to be able to say, you know what, we both made mistakes. Now, how do we go forward?
I think when I was standing and praying, when I started standing, I looked at Bob and thought of all that he was doing, and look at me, I'm not doing half as much as he was doing. I felt I was.
So look how horrible he is, and I'm the shining
much better than him. Yeah. And then when I went to a church service, there was a sermon that was just directed for Charlene Steinkamp only, I thought, because he was just pounding on every thought that I was having, that it's not about, it takes two people to make a marriage.
Right.
And I was at the point when Bob did leave, I was packing his bags to leave because I was so wounded and angry. And I had all that anger, bitterness, and unforgiveness. And that is sin.
Right.
And that is what we have to say. Don't look at your spouse as the only one. We need to say, are we surrendering our heart and lives to the Lord like you are talking about? And saying,
and asking God to reveal to you areas where you need to ask for forgiveness.
Oh, yes. Lord, speak loud to me of what I've done and what I'm doing that I don't even know I'm doing wrong. And that's one of the thoughts and words I used was unforgiveness.
Right.
Because I just kept rewinding and listening to him of what he was doing. And when he was talking about restoration, I was so quick to say, how do I know if you changed? I wasn't trusting God. I was saying, what about you?
Well, so let's go down that path. You guys get remarried. And did you have, Heidi, a sense of that question? How do I know if you really have changed, if you're really different, or was that not a worry for you?
Oh no, absolutely. It was a worry.
Yeah.
My main concern is like, can I really trust him again? And I think, even after getting married again, it was still kind of there. I mean, it was, I had enough confidence in the Lord, and that I was in confidence in him, the changes I had seen in him, and through conversations, that I felt good enough to remarry him. But it was a little bit of an issue still in the early parts of marriage, where I thought, well, what if I get fooled again? And what if he goes back down that path and I get tricked and this happens again? And I felt afraid to trust. And so we went to Re-Engage, which is a marriage, group. And something again clicked for me, that it was a decision. I'm making a decision to trust the Lord and stop putting, I don't want to go back into those codependent behaviors. I don't want to be worried or living in the past. I need to forge forward with what we have and put my absolute trust in the Lord, knowing that he will take care of me no matter what. And that's where the shift happens. And every so often when I get, triggered or something comes up, I just remember I can take a step back and say, okay, I've made that decision. I'm not going down that road.
Yeah.
We're on a path.
Amen.
How are you doing with your recovery, Victor?
Oh, I'm doing really good. It's a struggle every day. I mean, with everything out there, you see stuff everywhere you look, and that's the hard part about having an addiction to pornography, is that it's everywhere, and it's been normalized by the world. Everybody is okay with it, and
You're right.
and it's just not okay. And I've learned what my triggers are. I've learned what not to do and where not to go. For me, the best feeling I had, and I think probably for anybody that has a problem with pornography, is the fact that I can leave my phone sitting on the counter, and Heidi has full access to it, and I'm not trying to hide anything, because that was a huge source of contention, because I would have my phone on me all the time. I didn't want her to go through my phone because she might see something I was looking at, and now I just don't care. Now,
Amen.
it seems like a small thing, but it's a big deal for me to know that she can trust me.
Yeah, that's a huge deal.
It is.
Do you have any tips for couples on how they can set up some maybe boundaries, that want to try to have some guardrails in their marriage around this pornography? Maybe a couple that is listening to this has walked through this, or even an individual who is standing for their marriage and has gone through it, and they want to try to have some guardrails in their life. Do you have any suggestions on how they can do that? Be it having an accountability partner. Should that accountability partner be their spouse, or is it better for it to be a different person? What are some suggestions you would give for someone?
Well, I would say first off is your accountable. For me, your accountability partner should not be your spouse. You should definitely work the program and allow your spouse in with the process of the program. So you're working it together, but your accountability partner has to be somebody that is going to challenge you, is going to call you out on something that might seem like not a big deal to you, but it might be a big deal, and they're not afraid to call you out on something that is and upset you a little bit. I think having protection on your phone and your devices is a huge thing. Covenant Eyes for me was a big thing. and having those accountability people being able to see exactly what you're looking at. So when you decide to look at something, they get an alert and they can call you and say, come on, what's going on? And call you out on it, and just being active, being proactive in getting help. And don't be afraid of digging deep. It's going to hurt, because for me it hurt a lot to see some of the childhood stuff that I dealt with, but Heidi was worth it. Knowing,
Amen.
being able to dig deep and and see some of the pain that I've caused other people, pain that was caused to me, and work through that stuff, and cry, and just to feel the stuff that's going on in your life, and that you dealt with. I think that, as a guy especially, is a hard part, because we want to be tough. We don't want to have emotions and all this stuff. But I think having emotions and allowing yourself to feel that pain and was a huge thing for me.
And transparency, you can lie to Heidi or to your accountability partner and nothing is going to get solved, but
Yes.
you have to be willing to be transparent. And that's, just getting honest with ourselves and with God and letting him do that work in us is such a huge step.
Absolutely.
Well, I think you guys have an amazing testimony. We are so excited about what God has done in your marriage. And what the stand that you took, Victor, is not just for this marriage. And hopefully you guys realize that now. But as you have kids right now that you're raising, they're always going to be able to look back at what mom and dad went through. And as they have kids, I mean, that's why it's so important, and why we tell people to fight for their marriage, because it's not just about two people. It's about generations that see what you did, coworkers that see what God's done in your marriage, friends and family and people at church. And I just applaud you guys for being transparent with what you've gone through. And, the devil gets another black eye when we share what God's done.
Let me just interject also here with talking about guardrails and transparency with somebody else. Bob had, when he had the other relationship that was very serious locally, where we lived, he said to me, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. If she ever comes around or we meet, I'm going to tell you that night, so that I will not hide it, and I will be honest about it. It's going to hurt you, but I'd rather hurt you and have you pray for me and know what she's doing, and trying to re-stimulate and keep this relationship a secret. And I've broken it off. As you know, we got remarried very quickly, but she did not accept it, and she wanted to break it up. And I want everybody that's listening that may have that situation, that God, if we share and not keep secrets, and if your husband and you will be honest with each other daily and not keep stacking up secrets, accountability it's going to be helpful in how you restore your marriage, and how we worked on our restoration.
Yeah.
It wasn't healed instantly, right afterwards. It's a process that you're talking about. And the phones, we didn't have phones like we all have now. So we were spared, really, in a way that we all have to go through right now. Right. So it was, I love talking to you, and hearing your testimony is so much encouragement for so many others that have gone through the different things. And it's not just one person, but you both have worked on yourselves and together also, which is applause. It's such a huge applause.
No, we thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
Well, can you guys give me one word of encouragement? Victor, maybe you can give a word of encouragement to men who are standing. And what would you just say if you could sit across from a man who's standing? And I know we're singling out the women. I'm sorry, ladies, but this will encourage you as well. But I just know that men who are standing for their marriage are a special group of people because it's just not as common. Unfortunately, it's just the way the numbers fall that a lot of men, they may start with the desire to have restoration, but they give up, they get impatient, and they don't just stay the course. And so I would just love to hear you encourage, a man that is going through standing.
I would say just stay focused. It's hard. It's really hard. And when you're feeling lonely and tired, just listen to a podcast from Rejoice Marriage Ministries, call a friend, and just know that nothing is too great for God, and that it can happen for you. It will happen for you. That you can have a restored marriage, and just to stay positive and look at what could be.
That's great. Heidi, what would you say to someone who's walking through recovery with a spouse as they're going through that journey?
Get individual counseling to, just really comfort you through that hurt, and really seek God, work on your own recovery. I feel like real healing comes when you take a look within, stop looking at your spouse as hard as it is, take a look within, and just really let the Lord fill that void and that gap for you, because He will, and He will surprise you, and He will heal your heart in the deepest of places.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thank you guys for sharing. I know this is going to be an encouragement to so many people.
Yes, it will
and
be.
We are excited to continue watching your, marriage unfold in this season. And I know you guys have many years together of happiness coming.
Amen.
Thank you so
You're
much.
great.
Such a blessing and wonderful opportunity to share with us.
Thank you.
God bless.
Divorce strikes families around the world, often with little notice. You can help us minister to these families with your financial gift. Visit rejoiceministries.org and help us teach men and women what Jesus can do for their hurting family.
If we can help you in any way, we invite you to visit the website of Rejoice Marriage Ministries at www.rejoiceministries.org. Thanks for joining us today as we proclaim that God heals hurting marriages.